My 2024 college football preview is next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Gets caught.
They said you can't beat Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode. It is our 2024 college football preview, but first, a little disclaimer. You're not going to get the full preview here because that would take way too long of an episode. So if you want to read the entire thing, go to it right now at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. It's free up there for our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. But you're going to get the major highlights here on this episode, including the most popular part of my preview every year, my crystal ball predictions, my top 25 things that I think will or won't happen here in the season to come. And the last couple years, man, these have been pretty cash money. So let's see if we can keep it going. Let us begin. After never having a two-loss team make the college football playoff during the four-team era, we will have a three-loss team make it in the very first year of the 12-team era. And I would not be surprised if that three-loss team is our beloved Michigan Wolverines, given the kind of schedule that the Michigan Wolverines are facing this year. Number two, no team in the FBS will be undefeated heading into the college football playoff. Just too many teams, including top teams, play tough schedules. This is one of the tougher schedules that Georgia, for example, has played in recent memory, and my power ratings have them the unquestioned number one team. So with these mega conferences now and these unbalanced schedules, too many marquee matchups, I don't believe anybody will go undefeated in the FBS. Number three, all four of the Power Conference championship games will be rematches from the regular season. Get used to this too with imbalanced schedules, no divisions, and I think you're going to see that in all of the Power Conference championship games as well. And next segment, you'll see who I think will win every Power Conference championship as well as make the college football playoff. Number four, none of the teams moving to new conferences this year will win their conference titles in their first year in their new league. And yes, I'm including in that Oregon, who a lot of people like as a preseason top 5 team, and I like them quite a bit too, but I don't think any of the newbies will win their conference. Utah is the preseason favorite in the Big 12. I don't think they'll win there either. Number 5, the biggest in-season debate no one is talking about right now is what will be the still largely unknown tiebreakers to determine who makes conference championship games in leagues with no divisions. I mean, I ran into this in my college football preview, not knowing the tiebreakers. What do you do? If I were running these leagues, here's what I would do. Like, the ACC is the one power conference league that has revealed its tiebreakers. And you'll see here in a minute, I had to use an awful lot of them to determine who got to the conference championship game. What I would do is, if head-to-head doesn't apply, meaning it doesn't apply, if there's two teams tied or multiple teams tied, then I would just have the college football playoff rankings determine who goes. I mean, the entire season now is about the college football playoff, and those rankings are supreme. And so if we're getting rid of divisions to have the best two teams, to give our leagues the best chances of getting into the college football playoff and having multiple teams, then I would just let the college football playoff rankings be my tiebreaker then. That's what I would do if there's no head-to-head. All right, number 6, Ryan Day will leave Ohio State after the season to take over for the retiring Andy Reid as head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he will be replaced by Florida State coach Mike Norvell. That will get some tongues wagging for sure. Number 7, Liberty's Jamie Chadwell will succeed Mike Norvell at Florida State. Both of them keen offensive minds. That's the kind of coach they tend to like there at FSU. Number 8, Iowa State will win its first conference title since 1912. That's right, since the Titanic sunk. And this would end, therefore, the longest conference title drought of any power conference team. Yes, Vanderbilt has a conference championship more recently than Iowa State does. 9, after losing 4 games in a season only once between 1969 and 2001, Nebraska will lose at least 4 games for the 21st consecutive season. I still can't believe that's a real stat, but it is. But Matt Rule will take Nebraska to its first bowl game since 2016. That's Barack Obama was still president then. Number 10, Mack Brown will retire as North Carolina football coach at season's end, and he will be replaced by Texas State coach G.J. Kinney. Keep an eye on the Bobcats, by the way. I think they may be one of the dominant teams in the group of 5 this year. Number 11, Kirk Ferentz will retire as Iowa football coach after the season and be replaced by Kansas coach Lance Leipold, and that would be a dramatic culture change. I mean, they're both very similar as humans, but, one guy, thinks the first one to 40 wins, and the other guy would prefer if both teams don't score 40 in a game. Number 12, Deion Sanders will again fail to take Colorado to a bowl game. Too many swing games on the schedule. I still think they're too light in the loafers there on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And I'm not sold on him yet as a tactician level coach to be able to navigate a lot of these one possession games that my numbers say Colorado's going to be in this year. 13, Baylor will fire Coach Dave Aranda at the end of the season and replace him with UTSA coach Jeff Traylor in state. That seems like a pretty obvious one. 14, which means it'll be wrong. 14, Rutgers will finish with its most regular season wins in a decade. That's how long it has been since Rutgers has won 7 games or more in a season. 2014, they do that this year. 15, this will be the most watched college football season in the sport's history. Too many big games. Now, too many big brands that are guaranteed to face each other. Now, that shine could wear off if people get turned off by the fact the product has departed too much from its traditions. But this year will not be that year. 16, Florida coach Billy Napier will shock many by guiding the Gators to a bowl game despite the nation's toughest schedule, thus saving his job. 17, for the first time ever, Wisconsin will fail to make the Big Ten championship game for a 5th consecutive season. In fact, I think the Badgers are going to have to fight, scratch, and claw to be bowl eligible, which is what you'll see a little bit later on. 18, the Heisman Trophy finalist will be, in alphabetical order, Carson Beck at Georgia, Donovan Edwards at Michigan. I think Dono is going to have a monster year. Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, and Jalen Milroe with that Kalen DeBoer offense at Alabama. Number 19, Carson Beck will become Georgia's first Heisman Trophy winner since Herschel Walker in 1982, more than 40 years ago. Number 20, the results of the top 5 September non-conference games will be, I think Texas will beat Michigan early on. I think there's just too many wholesale changes on offense for the Wolverines to overcome that early in the year. I think LSU will beat USC regardless of who you think will win that one, though. I'd be taking the over. I mean, these are 2 defensively challenged programs indoors on a fast track. I like Texas A&M in a mild upset over Notre Dame opening night. I think that Lone Star heat's just going to be too much there. And Mike Elko, by the way, facing his former school where he was DC and his former quarterback as well, Riley Leonard. But I think he wins his Aggie debut. I like Florida to upset Miami in the heat of the swamp. How hot is that game going to be at 3:30 Eastern on August 31st? But I think the Gators pull off the upset in the opener as the home dog. That is going to be a super sultry swamp. And I like Iowa over Iowa State. Similar to the USC LSU game, regardless of who you think wins this one, I'd be taking the under. These are both coaches who think punting is winning. Number 21. Arizona, Kansas, and Missouri will start the season in the AP Top 25, but none of the three will finish there. 22. Boise State, Iowa State, and NC State won't start the season in the AP Top 25, but will finish there. 23. The following first-year coaches will lead their teams to postseasons in their first years. Major Applewhite at South Alabama, Trent Bray at Oregon State, Brent Brennan at Arizona, Fran Brown at Syracuse, Bob Chesney at James Madison, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, Mike Elko at Texas A&M, Jed Fish at Washington, Sharon Moore, Michigan, Gerard Parker at Troy, and John Sumrall at Tulane. 24. Liquidate these teams that will win at least 2 fewer games than they did last season. Duke, Florida State, James Madison, Michigan, Missouri, New Mexico State, Northwestern. These are regular season games, by the way. Old Dominion, San Jose State, SMU, Toledo, Troy, Tulane, UCLA, and Washington. I think all of those teams win at least 2 or fewer games than they did a year ago in the regular season. And then finally, 25. Invest, though, in these teams that I think will win at least 2 more games in the regular season than they did last year. That's Colorado State, Connecticut, East Carolina, Florida Atlantic, Indiana, Nebraska, TCU, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Western Michigan. So that's my crystal ball predictions for the upcoming season. We'll take a break. We'll come back. I'll walk you through my projections of how I think all the power conferences will finish, and then I'll unveil my predicted college football playoff bracket next. So now let's walk through how I think all of the power conferences will finish. We'll go through these individually. Let's begin with the ACC. Look at here. I predict what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5-way tie for first place in that league. A 5-way tie. And I had to go to the 4th tiebreaker. The ACC is the only power conference right now that is sharing what their tiebreakers are. I had to go to the 4th tiebreaker to determine whom was going to be in the conference championship game, and that ended up being Clemson and Florida State. I'll take Clemson over Florida State in the ACC as my conference champion in that league. But you can see I only have SMU, first year in the league, 1 game out. So I think there is an awful lot of parity in that conference right now. Looking at the honor roll in the ACC, I like Cam Ward to have a monster year at Miami as the transfer quarterback there. I think he'll be both Offensive Player of the Year and Offensive Newcomer of the Year. Keep an eye on Marvin Jones' son at Florida State, taking over there on the edge, and he comes in as a Georgia transfer, absolutely lit it up in the spring. Keep an eye on Virginia Tech. They have the most returning production in that conference, and they were a surprise team to get to a bowl game a year ago. I think Pat Narduzzi's career is on the wane there at Pittsburgh. I think Stanford upsets the aforementioned Hokies, though, on a cross-country trip. That's the biggest upset, I think, in the ACC this year. And I would buy low on Virginia Tech, as I just mentioned. I'd sell high on Georgia Tech, who did get to a bowl game last year, but only because Mario Cristobal doesn't know that you can just kneel at the end of a game. Next, we've got the Big 12, which is now 16 teams. I've got Iowa State and Utah tying atop the conference standings, and the Cyclones, after losing to Utah late in the year in Salt Lake City, coming back and beating them in Dallas in the Big 12 championship game. But you can see, again, I think there's a lot of parity in this league. I've got Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Central Florida, each only a game out of making the conference championship game. So not a lot of margin for error here. I've got, 9 teams within 2 games of first place in this league. So an awful lot of balance in this league, which is exactly what it's going for and what many people anticipated. My honor roll in the Big 12, some of the highlights from there. I think Oklahoma State's going to sweep the player awards between Ollie Gordon and Colin Oliver. I think Shedeur Sanders will be the offensive newcomer of the year with the stats that, in fact, I think Colorado will sweep both of the newcomer awards with Shedeur and Travis Hunter, with them coming in from the Pac-12. I think Matt Campbell might even end up being National Coach of the Year with the season he's about to have at Iowa State. I think it'll be a down year overall for BYU football, but I do think they pull an upset early in the year at home against Oklahoma State. And then I would buy low on the Cyclones. Their win total is only 7.5. They have the most returning production in the league. I would sell high on West Virginia. I don't think they'll drop off that much. I just don't expect them to win 9 games again like they did last year when they saved their head coach's job. To the Big Ten, which is now 18 teams. I have Ohio State and Michigan tying atop the league standings at 8-1. Not far behind them, though, Oregon and Penn State. So, again, a lot of parity here. I have USC and Iowa next, but in terms of my power rating, they are definitely behind those top 4 teams. And really, everybody's behind Ohio State, according to my power ratings heading into the season. I think Nebraska has a bit of a renaissance year at 8-4. They used to fire coaches for that, Nebraska. Now you'll get an extension. But that will still be yet another 4-loss season, as I projected just a minute ago in my crystal ball. There you can see I have Wisconsin struggling to get to bowl eligibility with a very difficult schedule and still struggling to determine this new identity, abandoning what Barry Alvarez built for what Luke Fickell wants. I have a lot of teams hovering right around bowl eligibility in this conference, including Indiana, under first-year coach Curt Cignetti. My Big Ten honor roll and award winners that I think you'll see, I think Donovan Edwards will have a monster year as the Offensive Player of the Year. And I think Michigan's going to have a lot more of a competitive schedule than Ohio State. So I think Donovan Edwards is going to get more touches than guys like Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson will. I think Will Johnson at Michigan, the top-ranked player in the new college football game. I think he'll be the Defensive Player of the Year. I think Mason Graham will be the lineman of the year. So this is kind of indicative of Michigan's team. It does not return the depth it had last year, but the top line talent it's returning is as good as anybody in college football. I think Dylan Gabriel have a monster year at Oregon with those receivers. He's a borderline Hall of Fame player in college football with his stats. Matt Rule, I think, will be Big Ten Coach of the Year. I don't know that any Big Ten coach will get fired. I think Brett Bielema is the most likely to be fired, though. Unfortunately, I think the conference upset of the year will be Michigan's first road game of the season at Washington. I think the Wolverines lose there, get a second loss, and then kind of regroup and finish the season strong. I think Illinois gets revenge against Kansas and upsets them in the non-conference. I would buy low on Nebraska. I would sell high on UCLA. I don't think they sniffed the 8 wins they had a year ago. And then that brings us to the SEC. I have Georgia and Texas ahead, although I don't have Texas the second best team in my power ratings. When you factor in the schedule, they got about as favorable of a schedule as you can get entering into the SEC. I think Alabama and Ole Miss are right behind. Ole Miss also has a very favorable schedule. LSU, Tennessee, kind of the same team to me. Oklahoma, very difficult schedule. A&M, a very difficult schedule, but most of those tough games are at home. A&M, by the way, has not won a road game in college football since 2021, if you can believe that. So a lot of parity in this league, too. I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 teams winning 8 games or more in that league. That's pretty incredible strength of that conference. The honor roll for the Southeastern Conference, for me, I think you're going to see a lot of balance here with so many talented players. I've got players from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different schools, or 6 different schools winning 5 different schools winning the top 5 individual awards. I think Steve Sarkisian coming in and going 11-1 in the regular season will make him in his first year SEC Coach of the Year. I like Billy Napier to survive, but let's face it, he's still the most likely coach to be fired. Alabama host Georgia. These teams don't play a lot in the regular season. This will be the first time that Georgia has played at Alabama with fans since Nick Saban's first season there in 2007. That's how long ago it's been. We get Texas A&M and Texas back and look for A&M to upset undefeated Texas at the end of the year as little brother draws first blood in that renewed rivalry. I would buy low on Florida. I don't think they'll be great. I just think 4.5 win total is just obscene for a team that I still have power rated as a top 25 team. I would sell high on Missouri. Great year a year ago. I know they're returning a lot of production. The schedule is favorable, but history says they're just not going to repeat that 2 years in a row. Which brings me to my very first ever college football playoff bracket. Let's lay this out for you. I believe as conference champions, Georgia, Ohio State, Iowa State, and Clemson in that order will receive first-round byes. My projected first round, the group of 5 representative, the 12th seed Boise State would then go at number 5, Texas. Number 11, Ole Miss. It came down to them and Notre Dame for the final spot in the field, and I gave it barely to the Rebels. It was very close. Ole Miss would host Alabama. They don't actually play this year, even though that's an SEC game. They would play at Alabama. Number 10, Penn State would be at number 7, Michigan. I mean, the ratings on that with those two fan bases, that energy level would be obscene. And I think Oregon would go on the road to face LSU, likely at night at Tiger Stadium. That would be your 8-9 matchup in the first round. The quarterfinals. Now, the way this works, the current bowl contract is still in effect despite the playoff expansion. And so teams actually don't get to pick based on seeding where they want to go yet. They're still tied into the bowls that their conferences automatically are tied to. So the Sugar Bowl, Georgia would prefer to go to the Peach. It's right down the road. But they'd end up in the Sugar Bowl as the SEC champion, and I have them facing 9th-seeded Oregon. Look at that, Butte. Could you imagine a Michigan-Ohio State Rose Bowl? By the way, this would also be, I didn't plan it this way, this would also be the 3rd time Michigan and Ohio State would play this coming season, if I'm right about this. That's crazy. Even crazier, could you imagine if it was in the Rose Bowl? Could you imagine scarlet and gray, maize and blue in that stadium, that hallowed hall? I mean, wow. Even thinking about that, I'm getting chills. The Fiesta Bowl, Iowa State would go there as the Big 12 champion, and they would face 6th-seeded Alabama. And then the Peach Bowl, Clemson is the ACC champion against Texas in that matchup. Which brings me to the semifinals. The Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl are the semifinals this year. I have Texas against Georgia. That's a rematch. I have the Orange Bowl, Alabama versus Ohio State. And then my national championship game, I absolutely hate to do chalk, but my numbers say these are the 2 best teams going into the season. So Georgia over Ohio State. Again, if you want the rest of my college football preview, there's news and notes in there. My first mock draft of the year, award winners in major college football, all of that stuff you're going to find there on our Patreon page, free to read, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Just scroll down till you see my college football preview, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. We'll come back, wrap things up here in a moment. All right, this week's Twitter poll results. What is the most likely outcome to Michigan's 2024 college football season? 56% of you said make the playoff. 29% of you said 8 to 9 wins and no playoff. 11% said a 4th straight Big Ten title. And 4% of you are keep hope alive with a repeat natty. I'm feeling you. But I would be more in the make the playoff category that ended up winning this poll. Which brings me to my feedback of the week. This is in response to Clayton Sayfie over at the Wolverine, who does great work over there, by the way, posting yet again the final play of the Rose Bowl. And John Scally says, I cannot watch it enough, John. Neither can I. I mean, I was there. I saw it in person, up close and personal, felt it in person. It's one of the best moments of my life as just being there and getting to share that with my wife and my son. That's a lifelong memory, man. Can't take it away. And I've also watched that play about 100 times since New Year's Day. So you're not alone. All right, hopefully you watch this 100 times because it'll help our views. All right, so don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review. Help us to find more Michigan fans just like you, whether right here on YouTube or you're listening on iTunes or elsewhere. And thank you to all of you who do that for us. You can also be thankful if you follow us on X, Twitter, in between episodes, at Michigan Podcast there. Again, at Michigan Podcast there. We'll have lots of thoughts on Michigan at Big Ten Media Days this week and more you don't want to miss. At Michigan Podcast on X. Until the next time, right here on Michigan Podcast, I'm Steve Deace. We'll see you then. Go Blue. My 2024 college football preview is next on this week's There it is. Let's try that again. Go Blue! I'm 24 college football preview. That'd be funny, actually, if you did that. Yes. A little after credit scene, me battling hiccups. I think people get a kick out of that. You're not going to get the full preview. That would take. So you're going to get the major highlight. I put together Patreon page at patreon.com/ You're going to get the major. Let us begin with the bit. This is ridiculous.